This is Politics and Education by Joseph Clark, module code 66504069, student number 31053258. So today we're going to discuss the two marginalised groups that's in PE within school, which will cover social exclusion, stereotyping, and social inequality. So the main two that we're going to discuss today is gender inequality, which will cover a broad range of things, and poverty. So to start off with, we'll look at the two main political ideologies that is influenced within school, which is the Conservative and Labour format. And with Conservative, it's equality over equity. So everyone given the same opportunity outcome depends on the individual. And then for Labour, it's equity over equality. So whoever needs the most support, they get the most support over others that don't fully need it. So moving on from there, the examples of Conservative education and PE policy reflects the ideology. So a lot in the Conservative format, supported by D. Adamson, S. Piper, and C. Solverson, is it's competition based, and with that it isolates a lot of students that aren't competitive at something in particular. So a lot of it, like for example, rugby for boys, netball for girls. That's an example of stereotyping. So moving on, we've got the Labour education and PE policy reflection. So sport for all is where it specialises in this situation, girls and poverty areas. And with girls, generally, the big problem is that they have is their confidence and body image and various things like that. And there's lots of complications with that. And then with poverty, it's how they get involved within the sport or whatever it is. And that's supported by F. Papadopoulou 2024. And then there's the PESSCL, which is Physical Education, School Sport and Club Links, which ensures that there's 2 hours of sport for students between 5 and 16. And then there's the evolved version, which ensures 5 hours of sport, which is called Physical Education Sport Strategy for Young People. So it goes further than the 16. So that's supported by DECA 2009. And then the ideology is to ensure that they get full support, with it being evolved from the 90s with Labourism and things like that, and developmentism and new social democracy. And this is all supported by L. Patterson, Oxford, 2003. Moving on very slightly, there's the gender inequalities examples within society. So, like mentioned, there's the social exclusion, stereotyping, and social inequality. With the social exclusion, the problem involves in trying to develop gender sensitive ways to measure out poverty and ensuring that households have got the right support, things like that, and that so it sort of coincides together a little bit. And that's supported by J. Miller, 2003. And then you move on to the stereotyping, which results the results have shown that teachers' perceptions largely confront what they used to. So, or what the typical standard stereotypes, so gender roles, gender in sport, like mentioned previously, rugby for boys, netball for girls, because it's a non-contact sport, netball, and rugby is a contact sport. And that's supported by S.P. Priest, 2022. And then social inequality within gender inequality. There was a study in 2021 where they got 54 participants, all born after 1995, where they tested what the theme, where they sort of evolved into like educate and teachers, sports, and various things like that, and it all depends from the youth on how much support they get. So boiling down to that, it means that more support you get, the higher chance of succeeding and having a bigger career than a standard job that you would do day in, day out type thing and not moving on. And then moving on to the poverty side, we briefly touched on it, but in 2010, there was a European Year of Social Inclusion where in the EU it confirmed the role of sport being a programme to ensure disadvantaged and gender groups were going to get more support, and there's going to be more, and we're going to cover absolutely everything from gender, age, ethnicity, disability, being at risk of involvement in crime. So it covered the whole spectrum. Including that poverty was a core area because we knew that was the core impact on how they evolved. Like people from disadvantaged backgrounds wouldn't be able to go on school trips, ski trips, for example, because of the expense, competitions, things like that, all plainly simply because of their financial background. And then it goes into the stereotyping that indicated that several psychological factors impacted on a student's ability to improve, especially with girls, because of the hidden curriculum and stereotyping, things like that, and the lack of discipline to ensure that it didn't happen, to put resilience against it. And that's supported by D. Ellison 2019. And then social inequality, which had 3 factors, supported by I. McDonald 2003. Setting suitable learning challenges, responding to pupils' diverse learning needs, and overcoming potential barriers. So a lot of teachers previously just got on with what they set out a lesson. If you couldn't do it, you were left to it. That's basically what that was talking about. And then moving on to gender inequality, child's PE experiences, they got the feeling of, especially girls compared to boys, that for girls, sport just wasn't for them. Partly due to the inequality, inequality of how far a female could go supported wise with particular sports. Like if a girl wanted to do football or rugby, there weren't that support. And that's supported by A. Laker 2003. And then there were significant findings in 1997 that the girls had more positive attitudes towards the teacher than the boys because they were more lenient and were less concerned about the organisation of the curriculum. Multiple regressions identified pupils' views with regards to assessments were more in sort of the same. Moving on to the poverty side of PE, it sort of coincides with the girls and gender again, but plain and simply, if there was a study of 14 primary schools that showed that there was a lot of people from diverse backgrounds. So depending on the school, depending on how much funding they got, depending on how far those particular students could go. And this is supported by E.L. Irie 2022. The barriers addressed at all levels to combat the problem of the disadvantaged groups being left behind. And then in 2007, the study found that children from disadvantaged backgrounds sort of had the same thing as I've just mentioned about disadvantaged schools were less likely to have the facilities. So the 2022 study sort of emphasised that problem. And then you move on to the hidden curriculum, where a lot of it is based on the hidden concept of there's things that you learn that you don't realise you're learning. That's basically what it means. So social skills and development was, and not exactly taught in particular areas. So like mentioned about the girls, there were studies showing that girls usually get bullied by other pupils, generally quite often from the study showed by other girls themselves about having a particular type of body, and so the body shaming and things like that, and they came up with a term of slim thick, which meant one particular part of the body had to be a particular type, and it was all about image, which develops into bullying and various other things like that. And then a lot just don't want to be in that situation, and that coincides with professions as well in school in various areas, like for example the Euros and things like that. Women won Euros, the men didn't, and it sort of sidelined the women winning the Euros, just because the women, that's how it's perceived, and that's supported by those that I've just mentioned. And then the hidden curriculum would, like for example, what the girls and poor students learn. As mentioned, PE and sport are not for them. Only certain body shapes are fit, healthy, and can compete. So only certain people can be at that level. And then students from the poverty background are not as capable as affluent peers, so segregated and put in bottom set. So the highest students in schools in the top set go to on excursions and things like that, and the bottom set are there just to be there, basically. And that's supported by several in 2002 R.H. Ron Holt. And what do other students learn about gender poverty in hidden curriculum? So with gender, it's some girls can sit out and avoid, and a lot of teachers don't, and like keep them involved in some way, and boys are dominant and major supported. And then the poverty side, poor, not as capable or worthy. So it's the stigma of if you haven't got money, you can't do it. And then overall, as a whole, supported by all the references that's given, the school organisation and process hidden curriculum, the competition priority levels to the priority of hidden curriculum that's putting is sports assigned to genders, team building, emotional intelligence, and communication skills, and that's supported by in 2014-2015 Solomon and Hoban, and this is major supported by this, and the assigned gender of things. So yeah, I think I've covered it all.